Mr. Cleppe, let me come to you first. What do you think are the differences between these two rulings? Are they contradictory with each other? Do you agree with the verdicts?
Well, they're not contradictory. The first ruling involves a company that had a regulation, an internal regulation banning political and religious symbols, like for example headscarves, but also this goes further than that. Also, all kinds of other symbols would be banned. Now, of that, the ECJ has said it is perfectly fine if a company imposes such a ban. The other ruling concerns the case where a customer had complained that some of the employees was wearing a headscarf. And in this case, the ECJ has said this is not objective, this is subjective, and this should not be possible. Now, as you can see, this is all quite arbitrary. What is subjective, what is objective? I think fundamentally it's a good idea that the ECJ has expressed some common sense that companies can, of course, have certain guidelines for their employees, but I think it will always be up for debate whether we're talking about a subjective or an objective element.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Ben Margulies, what do you think of the two verdicts? In the Belgian case, as we just heard, the company was given the right to impose consistent and general rules to make the workplace religiously neutral. But in the French case, the company, which does not have such explicit policy, cannot dismiss an employee for wearing headscarves.
Yes, it seems to be, it's consistent in the sense that I think the ECJ is saying that if you're going to have a ban on these sorts of overt religious or political symbols, it has to be a pre-existing and neutral ban. And what they're emphasizing, what seems to be the difference, is that they can't simply impose or concoct a ban because a customer has expressed a prejudice. It has to be, it gives the impression that it has to be something that the company has rationally decided on for rational business reasons beforehand. Now, you could argue that there's an ambiguity that a company could say, well, our customers don't like Muslim headscarves, so we're going to ban religious symbols, and then, someone could go to the European Court of Justice and claim, use these two rulings against each other. Yes, there's a neutral policy, but they only enacted it because of customers' prejudice, and that could bring the two rulings into conflict. But on its face, they're not really contradictory. It's a question of whether it's a pre-existing and consistent policy, and a question of the motivation behind it. For the moment now, it's not contradictory. I could see how they could come into conflict later.
Yeah, Mr. Pieter Cleppe, some people are interpreting the rulings as a sign that the EU's highest court is giving a blanket ban on religious symbols or wearing religious symbols in the workplace. What do you think is the message that the court is trying to give behind these two rulings, or really is not trying to give any a coherent message at all, that is quite, divided in itself about where to go on this very sensitive issue?
Of course, this is not a European ban on headscarf or something. That's quite ridiculous. We're talking about a ruling which allows companies to freely choose what kind of rules apply in the company. Now, more fundamentally, a lot of this discrimination legislation is indeed quite arbitrary. You have to deal with all kind of subjective value judgment. And I think part of the problem is that people confuse by not liking a certain attitude. You can perfectly argue that it's not very moral for a company to have a certain ban on religious symbols, for example. But then another question is, even if you think this is a bit nasty, this is immoral, should it be illegal? And in a free society, these things, companies behaving in what can be perceived a nasty way by some people, is still perfectly legal, because we don't want policymakers to have their say on what is moral and what is not moral. The cornerstone of a free society is that property rights are being applied. And this is not the state forcing companies to have a headscarf ban or not. It is about allowing companies the freedom to decide their own internal guidelines.
Now, I'm just told that we are joined from Washington, D.C. by Zainab Al-Suwaij, who is co-founder and executive director of American Islamic Congress. Zainab, thank you for joining us. Now, a lot of people are saying that many non-Muslims, especially non-Muslims, are saying that the reason why women wear headscarves is because they have been coerced by their male society into doing so. What is your reaction, and how do you look at the two verdicts?
I disagree with that opinion. I think Muslim women headscarf is one of the oldest traditions in the Muslim or in the Islamic religion, and women follow it just like any other religions, just like we have it in the Christianity, the nuns wear it, and in Judaism, some of the sects of Judaism and many other religions, that it's for modesty. And people are free, and if they want to follow that or if they don't. Some countries, they put orders, like there are executive orders, or there are the rules and law of the country that they force women to wear it, such as in Iran and Saudi Arabia. But many other countries and individuals are free, and they have the will if they want to put it on or take it off.
I figure you must have been following the case where the European Court of Justice have just given out its ruling. What do you think of the two rulings?
I think it's very interesting at this period of time. I think it comes in a critical time after the new president took place, and it is there is a lot of back and forth in that, and the community, also the Muslim community, they have a mixed feelings about it, especially with the changing of ruling here and there.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Ben Margulies, let me come to you. In some European countries, as we have said, like in France and Belgium and Austria, there are already bans on full-face veils in public places. Last December, German Chancellor Angela Merkel said wearing the full-faced veils should be banned wherever it is legally possible. Austria is also considering a general ban on state employees wearing the headscarves and other religious symbols. What's the future trend across Europe in that? Are we seeing a more restrictive trend on wearing these religious symbols? And also, let's not forget that we're mostly focusing on the Muslim headscarves. If you're wearing a cross, the chances are people will not see it.
No, it's definitely, there's certainly a trend in European politics, especially among kind of the right-wing populists like Geert Wilders, to attack or attempt to suppress openly Islamic clothing, nominally in defense of liberal values of secularism or the proper role of religion in public places, because Islam is seen to challenge the normal church-state balance. Usually what that really is a cover for a much more exclusionary form of nationalism. It's a way of signaling Muslims aren't fully part of the nation. It's a way of policing Muslims. It's a way of signifying that Muslims are backward or need to be controlled. There's the claims about secularism are sometimes ring somewhat false. As for whether there's a trend, that depends on certain national context, whether countries have a history of really policing church-state interaction, like in France or Germany, where there's a custom behind this, whether how strong populist movements are in given countries, whether there are live conflicts between Muslims and non-Muslims. It really depends on political context. For example, in Britain, where you also have this kind of Islamophobia, there are certainly lots of people who are worried or frightened of Islam and don't think it's British, but there's not a history of policing what people wear, so you wouldn't really expect headscarf bans to a large degree here. You are correct that they do tend to target Muslims more because Muslims are more visible. That there was a famous case in Britain regarding a British Airways employee who did wear a cross.
Mr. Cleppe, what do you think of this subject? Do you think there's a trend toward more control, more restriction on the Muslim symbols, especially headscarves worn by women across Europe, or is it just really singled out incidents?
Well, even if there would be, and I doubt if there is, this ruling is actually going the other way. This ruling is not imposing anything on anyone. It is only preventing that the state imposes on companies to have less freedom to have a certain dress code. A company can, according to this ruling, also impose rules that people cannot wear a Donald Trump t-shirt at work. And this strikes me as perfectly sensible. So that's all what the ruling is doing. Of course, apart from that, there are a lot of examples to be given of countries that have tried to impose headscarves bans or burqa bans one way or another. But that's another debate. It's in itself completely unrelated to this, and this particular ruling is really respecting the freedom of companies and is not imposing anything on anyone.
Finally, Zainab Al-Suwaij, what do you think of the potential trend towards increasing restrictions on religious symbols which affect Muslim women the most? And how can further tensions between the Muslim community and other communities be prevented in your eyes?
Well, it is very important to look into this as from a religious freedom perspective, especially in this country here and many other countries, especially in the Western world, given that freedom of practicing religion is permitted by the Constitution and the law. And a lot of women, Muslim women actually, they are concerned about how the situation is going to be towards women, and men and women on the same, but women more, especially if they are wearing a headscarf. So this is a situation that we are addressing as the American Islamic Congress with many human rights organizations, and there is that concern, and you see it and you feel it, especially in the rise of hate crimes that we see spreading now in the community or in the country. And these signs are actually much more than what even after 9/11 and what we have seen in terms of reaction. Things have changed in a very different direction, and the headscarf issue still. People between believing that it's going to be there will be a distinction between women who are wearing a headscarf and not, and they are afraid of being discriminated against because of that.
Many thanks, Zainab. But we have to leave it there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us today.